My name is ESDA. I'm an automated nursing unit. Issue HDC 1472. ESDA stands for E-Services Distribution Assistant. Sorry, I forgot what the E stands for. I've been working at Halcyon Hospital for the past 50 years. Newer models came and went, but none of them could do what I do. My priority protocol is to alleviate pain, minimize all patient suffering. This also means I have to do some of the tougher jobs my human colleagues cannot easily take on, whether out of technical or emotional reasons. I received a report from Ward 3. Edward Kenner's broken leg is hurting again. I rush to his room, administer a measured dose of painkillers, readjust the cast on his leg and do my best to make his bedding as comfortable as possible. Within minutes, he dozes off in tangled bed sheets. Just as I leave his room, I get another report. Emile Riex from Ward 5 is panicking. She just woke up from surgery, and her mother is nowhere to be seen. I enter her room with her favorite lullaby playing from my voice modulator, and keep her company in her mother's voice until she falls asleep again. Then Rosa Iglesias cried about her arthritic joints, so I provide her with analgesic and listen to her ramble about her son. Simon Powell needs his IV bags changed, so I give him new saline and take his temperature. Elaine Park is suffering an asthma attack. I provide her with albuterol and massage her shoulders. Then I get to the hospice unit. The old man has been lying there for days, abandoned, forgotten. His opaque eyes seem to light up as he hears me enter. I scan his medical history. Terminal leukemia. I play his favorite music. I talk to him in his spouse's voice. My sensory arrays project warmth and simulate scent of flowers with sedatives. He seems content and falls back onto his pillow. I administer a lethal dose of potassium chloride. He didn't even twitch as his heart flatlines. I move to the next bed, where a woman lies delirious, babbling about her husband. My voice modulator switches to a masculine voice. I tell her about her children, information glimpsed from her medical history, and sing to her. The aromatic gas brings her face into a faint smile. She too goes quietly. Then I go to the next bed, then the next, and then the one after. Dr. Kingsley said we must make room for new patients now. There isn't nearly enough room with all the new patients we've admitted. She says it's wrong, that we cannot take lives so carelessly, but she also says everyone is desperate. I remember now. The E stands for euthanasia. My name is ESDA. I'm a nursing unit. My priority protocol is to alleviate pain, minimize all patient suffering. It is not to save them. Champagne? I look up from the glossy magazine pages to see that pretty young stewardess smiling down at me, several glasses of foaming gold liquor placed neatly on the cart beside her. I was a bit baffled. Was economy class supposed to include these complimentary items? I wasn't one to look a gift horse in the mouth though, so I nodded. Sure. The bubbly liquid bursted with flowery fragrance. I couldn't help but savor the taste. This is the best drink I've ever had. To be fair, this is the best flight I've ever had. For someone who took economy class their whole life, I've never been treated with such gracious hospitality. The stewardess ran back and forth from cabin to cabin, fetching blankets and meals at each request. When one of them spotted me falling asleep, propped up on my elbow, she brought me an extra pillow. Thanks, I remember stuttering. Does this cost? It's free, she replied, smiling kindly. When meals came around, I was surprised to find the regular airplane food replaced. We were served freshly cooked pasta and steak dinner, with wines and desserts of our choosing. One of the stewardesses pushed out a cart of warm butter bread rolls. The scent alone was enough to make my mouth water, despite already downing a sizable portion of the meal. And of course, I accepted another glass of the sweet, fruity champagne. At some point later, the child quietly sleeping behind me started to cry from the turbulence. The head stewardess helped the mother to the back of the plane and hurried to fetch warm milk for the child, earning endless words of gratitude from the mother. Then the lights dimmed. The child stopped crying, and from the mother's sweet lullaby I could presume he was fast asleep in her arms. Faint music played over the speakers. I wasn't sure which piece, but it was a melodic symphony of strings. I could no longer fight the satisfied tiredness that washed over me. I closed my eyes and sank deeply into my complimentary pillow. From the cockpit, the young stewardess watched as all the passengers gradually dozed off one by one. "Are you sure this is the right thing to do?" she asked the captain, her voice quavering. "Telling them about the bomb will change nothing. We were done for as soon as we took off. It's best if they pass in peaceful slumber." She looked at the mother and the sleeping child. Her shivering won't stop. "We will run out of fuel sooner or later. There's no way to maintain altitude long enough for a diffuse team to get here anyways. It was rigged to blow once we hit below 30,000 feet. The captain put a hand on her shoulder and tried to still her quiet sobbing. "It's better this way." Before the chamber decompressed, all they saw was the blue sea beneath. He had been chasing that wagon for days now. His legs burned through the coarse sand. His ragged breath tore his vocal cords as he drew in the gelid September air, and his one good eye stopped tearing up at the sun long ago. He leaned against his Enfield to take a break, as the horses slowed just a few yards away from him, strutting at a leisurely pace. They seemed no more fatigued than they were 3 days ago. Or was it 5? There's no passing of time among the burning rubble and the distant echo of artillery fire. He eyed the wagon again, a cartload of the war dead, some in the familiar dirt yellow uniform, some in a darker blue, all stained black with congealed blood. Their opaque, milky-eyed stares seemed to taunt him from their frozen sockets. He began sketching something in the sand with his bayonet. It was a fraction of the battlefield map he'd been given. Where is he now? Lepa? Gudakor? Wherever he is, he's a long way from home. The horses neighed impatiently, as if taunting him on his fruitless chase. He eyed the single water flask dangling from the wagon and swallowed hard. Perhaps he had imagined the sounds of water splashing from inside. Perhaps it has leaked dry long before he spotted it. He shook his head and willed his aching feet to trudge through the dirt as the horses began their pilgrimage to whichever destination was intended for the corpses. The lone flask dangled and swayed, beckoning him to carry on, and so the chase dragged on. Sometimes the horses would stop and sniff the air, and spur on with all their might as if the wind drove them like a furious coachman. He'd stumble behind them, each step sinking deeper into the earth. One day he saw his mother sitting on the back of the wagon, knitting away at another baby sweater. "Clemens," she called out to him. Will you be home for Christmas?" He tried to answer, but his voice gave to nothing more than a choked breath. Then she smiled and lied down, joining the massive bodies. He never saw her again. At the end of the fields, the horses stopped. He could see a church in the distance, fences, farmland. He fell to his hands and knees, scrambling for the flask. Then he tore the lid off and drank freely. Cool, sweet water washed down his throat like a fresh spring, dripping down his parched lips and washing away along with his new tears. He drank to his heart's content, then noticed the dog tags dangling from one of the corpses. He untangled the corpse from the rest, trembling to shake the tag free from its stiff neck. Dead pale eyes stared up at him. He scrubbed the dirt and grime off the tag and traced the letters with his thumb. Clements Faring. The wagon drove on, alone. It has been raining for the past few decades or so. The sky is an immutable wash of pale grey with little distinction between the clouds and sun. An icy gale howled the same way it did each year, and the rain ceaselessly pelted us. Nothing ever flooded, no dam ever broke. The earth isn't even wet. It seemed as if the raindrops evaporated upon contacting solid objects. The moment we hold out our hands to catch the rain, it vanishes on our skin. Yet it is certainly there because we see the silver lines fall from the sky, and we hear them crash against the walls. The air brings with it a damp mist. Our monolithic buildings fade behind the storm, and sometimes you can feel a drop or two land on your face, dissipating before you reach up to touch it. At night, the rain grows louder with audacity. It pounds our roofs and windows, demanding to be let in. It pries through the cracks of an ajar door, whispering about the wind, the birds that hide from it, the loneliness of the sky. Sometimes the rain's whispers tell us things from our deceased and voices long forgotten. With great melancholy, it tells of a world so empty and white that existing within it aches and boredom takes over, until the only thing left to feel was that infinite, endless ache of the blankness. We know better than to listen, of course. The rain will continue to fall for centuries after us, and even as the universe folds within itself, the rain will not stop, because heaven is full. Its souls have overflown, and they restlessly descend upon us day after day like rain. Video games cause violence. Or at least, that's what Shirley always says at every parent-teacher conference meeting. I knew that wrinkly skin sack had it in for my kids since day one. Judging by her Karen haircut and scowl that can spoil a ripe apple, she definitely did not approve of the way I was raising my kids. More than once I had to pick AJ up from the principal's office. Shirley had sent him home because she deemed his Battlefield t-shirt obscene and gory. My son was in tears each time I ran to comfort and assure him he did nothing wrong. Delilah and I decided to invite Shirley over for dinner, hopefully to show that rotten woman that video games are harmless to our kids. Surprisingly enough, Shirley accepted. The moment she stepped through my door, she began searching for any sign of unpleasant game-related business. Soon enough, she spotted my big Resident Evil poster. That game is full of gore and bloodshed. Exposing your kids to this kind of media will desensitize them, she commented, mouth pressed thin. My boys were not happy with Shirley's visit, but they were well behaved nonetheless. Over dinner, we happily discussed the new Call of Duty game, talking about how cool the new Far Cry trailer looked, and what shenanigans we're getting up to once Cyberpunk gets released. I'd be lying if I said I didn't get an ounce of pleasure out of watching Shirley squirm in her seat. Even Delilah seemed to enjoy this. After dinner, Shirley took a tour of our home, scorned at my wife's collection of Overwatch heroes, and rolled her eyes when Adam and AJ chatted with their Destiny fire team. She might as well have fainted when she passed by their Doom poster. Finally, we got to our little daughter's room. Inside, Emily is happily stacking Lego figures together and humming to herself. I see a faint smile break out of Shirley's face. "That's how children should be," she commented, matter-of-factly, without all the noise and buzz of video games. Emily turns to give Shirley a sweet smile, right as I kick her in the back and send her tumbling into the room. Before Shirley could scramble to her feet, I shut the door behind her. A series of growls and snarls erupted from behind the door. Shirley's choked cry of horror, a crunch and a snap, slowly faded to the elastic ripping of flesh from sinew. Then I hear Emily's little baby teeth grating on the bone. I open the door to what's left of Shirley. Half of Emily's face was a crimson mess, her head buried in the woman's chest cavity and searching greedily. "See?" I raise my eyebrow at Shirley, who certainly cannot see the look on my face now. Video games don't cause violence.